Hello everyone and welcome to the second of our Apple Classroom videos. This one is all about managing pupil devices using the functionality available to you in Apple Classroom. So we're going to open the Apple Classroom app, which is the orange tile with the whiteboard, and you'll see we're automatically presented with all of the classes that we've set up previously. I'm going to use this Miss A Media one, which we used before. And you'll see we've got Joe and Jane from the previous video. Now they're currently grey, but as they physically enter the room and they are authorised in Apple Classroom, they will turn into a coloured dot, which tells us that they are present. Now just looking at this main screen for a moment, you can see the functionality and the interface is really simple. Across the top we have the various different buttons that do different things. Then the bunches of coloured dots tells us the different groupings of pupils, and you'll notice that it does have an all tab which shows us every single pupil, an overview, and then it's automatically grouped Joe and Jane there together in home screen just to tell us that those are the pupils that are working on the home screen at the moment. Underneath that in the white pane you will see the different coloured dots that have the pupils' initials, and then underneath that their first name, and underneath that whatever they're working in at that current moment in time. Now if this was a class of 30, instead of just 2 dots I would obviously have 30 dots, and anybody who was added to the class but is not physically present or is having issues being authorised into Apple Classroom would appear as a grey dot, and it would say offline. And that's where you would give them a little bit of help getting online. You can refer to the first video if you need a couple of pointers on what to do if people are not showing up in Apple Classroom. So we're going to imagine that I have set this class to work, and we're just going to get Joe and Jane to navigate into some different apps here. And what you'll see on your teacher view is that next to their coloured dot on the bottom right hand corner, we now have an image, tiny, of the app tile of the app that they are working in. We also have underneath their first name the name of the app that they're working in. So I can see at a glance on that all grouping who is working in which app, which is a really handy overview. Now it might be that I want to actually view what they're doing on their screens. So this is where the screens button along the top comes in. It's the one with the little binoculars close to the right hand side. And what that's going to do is if I tap on it, you will see that rather than the coloured dots that represent the pupils, we will now have a live real-time view of their screen and what they are doing on the screen. Now this is quite small at the moment, it's not easy to see, so I can use 2 fingers to pinch out the way and make those screens bigger, and to make them smaller again I would just pinch back, but we can now see in a little more detail what Joe and Jane are doing. Now that's really helpful because you can kind of get an overview of what everyone's looking at as well, which can be quite handy. We might want to just look at one person's screen though, and to do that I'm going to tap on Joe, and you can see it brings up all of the options from along the top, but instead of applying them to all of the devices, I'm only going to apply that function to Joe's device. So at the bottom here, I have the screens button. If I tap on that, we now have just Joe's screen, and you can see it tells us at the top the pupil's name, and it gives us the real-time view of what they're doing. Now this is super handy for a number of reasons. Let's say for example Joe has done some excellent work, he's done a demonstration of really good learning, and we want to share that with the class. If I have the ability to project my iPad onto the whiteboard or the smartboard, I can use this screens functionality to demonstrate really easily and quickly to young people the learning that Joe has been undertaking. Now a little tip for people who have Apple TV in their classroom, we also have the option to do that, to mirror Joe's screen by using the AirPlay button. So back into the menu again and you can see AirPlay. If I tap that, you will see that nothing comes up just now because I don't have Apple TV in this room, but if I did, it would have the option to choose Apple TV, and I could use Apple TV and AirPlay to show Joe's screen to the rest of the class. Now, one thing to note is that pupils can tell when you're looking at their screen. So if we have a look at the pupil iPads at the moment, you will see in the top right hand corner where you've got your battery indicator and your percentage and things, there's currently a little red icon. Now that's because we're screen recording these iPads, but if you were in Apple Classroom and you were viewing their screens, this would be a little blue icon, so they do know if you are looking at their screens. Moving on then to some other features that might be useful. Right in the middle of our functions bar we have lock, which is indicated with a padlock, and this does exactly what you would expect it to do. It allows you to lock a device and make it completely unusable for a brief period of time. So really good if you need to get everybody together, get their attention, have them focused on instructions or on what you're saying. All I do is tap on the padlock and you will see it locks everybody's device. And now on the right hand side, the pupils are unable to use their device until such time as I unlock just by tapping the padlock again and letting them continue with their work. Now, it might be that we don't want to do this to all pupils, maybe we just want to lock one or two pupils' devices. If I want to lock an individual pupil, I simply tap on their screen or on their little dot, if it's still the dots, and it brings up again that functionality, but just for one device rather than all. And I can lock Jane here, and you can see that's allowing Joe to continue to work, but Jane is locked. So many reasons why that might be very useful in a classroom setting. Now to unlock Jane again, I have a couple of options. I can tap on her and use the unlock button there, or I could have just used the general unlock button, which would have unlocked every device that was currently locked. Now let's have a look at mute, which is also very helpful in a classroom setting. So it's the one at the top here, just next to the lock with the little bell with the line through it. And what that does is that actually mutes every pupil's device. So if they're playing some kind of video or they've got some sort of audio coming out of their device and it's getting a little bit noisy, you can mute all of the devices. And if I tap on it, what you will see is on the pupil's iPads, what happens is the volume goes from whatever it's at to 0. Now what's important to note about this is that this is not like the lock and unlock where you mute or you unmute. All it does is reduce that sound, and the pupils can then manually turn the sound back up again. But definitely handy to know about. Again, if I only want to mute one pupil device, it's just a case of in that all tab, tapping on the pupil and then going into the mute function just for that pupil rather than the entire group. Now the next handy feature is called hide, and that is the icon with the little eye. And what hide does is it will hide whatever active app is currently being used by the pupil. So it will take them back to their home screen. If I give this a tap, you will see that the pupils go from the app that they were working on back to that home screen. And that's really handy, especially if you think that maybe the lock's a little bit too severe. It's a really good way of just getting everyone's attention. Again, it's also really good if they're maybe on an app that they're not supposed to be on. You can put them back to their home screen as many times as you need to. The final thing that we're going to have a look at is groups. So you can see here that you already have automatically the all tab. Then you've got them grouped by whatever app that they are in, but you can set up your own manual groups for your own classroom management. So if your room is already set up in groups, you might want to perhaps make a grouping for each individual physical group that you've got in your class. And this allows you to control the group's devices rather than that option of all or one. So it's a kind of intermediate spot, which is good. To do that, all we're going to do is tap on the little plus icon where it says group underneath, and you will see I am first asked to name the group, which I will do, and I will then have the option of all of the young people in the class, and I just tap on whoever it is that I want to join that group. So I will put one of them in a group just now, and then I will make another group and put the other pupil in. Now obviously then I've got group A and group B here. You can see it automatically alphabetised itself, which is also quite handy. But that's a really good way to manage your classroom groupings, especially for group work. We know that a lot of these functions could be really useful. So you can see here I've now got my two different groups, and I've also still got my All tab, which is always on the left, so I can navigate between using all of the devices, individual group devices, or by tapping on an individual pupil I can manage their individual device. So hopefully you have found that useful. There have been some tools in here that you think you can make use of in your classroom, and it does make the one-to-one environment a little bit more manageable, a little bit more controlled perhaps. It gives you the opportunity to really focus in on the learning and teaching elements, just by having that little bit of a say over how the devices are managed in the classroom.